It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome into another edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 481. I'm a very subdued Evan Roberts here on the Rico because we are broadcasting this live from a hotel here in Boston, Massachusetts. I spent my Wednesday evening at TD Bank Garden watching the Boston Celtics dismantle the New York Knicks in the second half and force a Game 6 on Friday night at Madison Square Garden. I wanted to drive home. After this game was over, very reasonable time. The game ended at about 9:30. The Met game was still going on. But my wife insisted. She said, honey, I don't want to worry about you driving through the state of Massachusetts or the state of Connecticut, so get a hotel room. So here I am in a hotel room. I am not going to speak too loudly because I don't want to wake anybody up. I don't want to anger any Massachusettsers. But it was a very eventful evening in Boston. I had a good time with my friends up in the great city of Boston. And I'm sorry. I know that this may piss off 80% of the audience. I don't quite frankly care. I enjoyed myself in the city of Boston. Now, that's all I'll say about the Knicks and the Celtics. I'll get now to the Mets, in which I consumed this game in a very strange way. I put it on my phone, and the guy sitting to my left, some Celtic fan, who immediately, him and I had a bond because he could tell I hated the Knicks. He could just tell. Like, I'm not wearing any Yankee stuff or Mets stuff or Celtic stuff or Knicks stuff. I came very neutral, but he could hear the things I was saying while watching the basketball game. And he felt a kindred spirit. And then he really cracked up when my phone came out and I started analyzing every Clay Holmes pitch, which I was doing in the midst of this game, as much as one can. I mean, I'm at a playoff basketball game. Obviously, the Knicks and the Celtics were the priority. So I watched as much of it as I could. Now, Pete Hoffman was in the building for this rainy night against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Before we get into a lot of the details, some of my opinions on this thing, did it rain the entire time? Because watching on TV, obviously you could tell the monsoon, the one that affected Clay Holmes in the second inning, which we'll spend some time on. But was it raining the entire time that this game was going on?
No, it wasn't raining the entire time. There were some swells that picked up clearly, but there were some dead spots too. So there was a shoot. Obviously, you mentioned the Clay Holmes, which was the biggest one, but then there was like a consistent light rain for, I would say, a good few innings, and then it left, and then it came back, and then it left. It came back again.
It was not an enjoyable evening to watch a baseball game in the ballpark. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, dude, it was empty. And God bless everyone that was there, because there were people that were still hung around. Like, we went with my little league, and the people that were there were champs. They were having fun. They were soaked. There was these 4 girls. I would think they were about like between like 20 and 25 who were rocking Mets jerseys. And during that like swell, while after Holmes got off the mound and they're sitting there doing the dry agent nonsense, these girls are just standing there during a dance camp, just getting soaked with the monsoon. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
I think once you commit to going to a game like this, in which the weather conditions are bad, it's raining, it's not ideal, the ballpark is, basically empty, I think people who tend to go just have a good time. They basically lean into it and say, well, what else am I doing here? So I may as well have a lot of fun. I will tell you, when I saw the lineup, let's start right there, because I know there's a lot of Met fans that look at this game as a punt game. And I don't like the term. I don't like punt seasons. I don't like punt games. Like, are there punt games? Are there punt seasons? Sure. I don't think, and we'll start with the Sodto thing. And obviously there were other decisions that Carlos Mendoza made in this game. But let's start with sitting Juan Sodto. Sitting Juan Sodto, whether it's concern over the stolen base from the other night, in which he does steal second in the first inning, and he's kind of bending back and forth, almost looks like he injured something. He did stay in the game, so that's certainly a positive sign. But sitting Juan Sodto as like a precautionary exercise early in a season, in the middle of May, in which the weather is not good, and you do have the double off day, and you do have what is going to be an emotional series, I'm sure, for him, facing his former team, that is not punting. Now, is that annoying for someone who spent money to go to the game because you want to see Juan Sodto? Absolutely. But I do not have a problem with Carlos Mendoza looking big picture and sitting Juan Sodto. What I said on the air, because we did talk about this briefly on Evan and Tiki, it was mostly Knicks Celtics, but when I saw Soto wasn't in the lineup, what I said out loud is what I think everybody thought, which is I hope he's not hurt. I hope there isn't an injury concerning, considering if you go back and watch that stolen base from game 2, he did look a little bit uncomfortable. So my first concern was let's just make sure he's healthy. Mendoza comes out before the game. He says he's fine. He did admit that it wasn't easy talking Soto into an off day, which I can imagine is not easy considering his track record is that he plays every day. His track record with the Yankees last year, certainly with the Padres a year earlier when he played 162 games. What I think Mendy may be kind of bending the truth on is when he says there's no injury. Okay, that's true. There is no injury. But did he see something from Tuesday night that made him say, you know what? This is the perfect night to be cautious. Because I didn't like the way he was bending his legs after that stolen base. So he's not lying, Mendy. There is no injury. But it's possible that seeing that made him say, this is the perfect day to get him an off day. And I'm not against that. Look, I've said that about Lindor. I've said that about Alonso, certainly about Nimmo, that while it's great that guys play or want to play 162 games, it's probably smart to get them an off day here and there, whether it's a DH day, which Soto's done once this season, or it's just a full off day. So I'll start there and say, as disappointing as it is to not see Juan Sodto in the lineup, especially if you purchase tickets to go to the game, that's not punting. There's 162 games. Like, it's being smart. So that's number one. That's not a punt. I understand it. I hope there isn't something bigger. And it is just merely trying to give him a double off day. And if you're going to give Soto an off day, like if you're looking through the calendar and you're saying, all right, I'm going to give him maybe 3 off days a season. When should I do it? How could you not agree that a Wednesday night in which you've already won the first 2 games of a series, again, this doesn't mean you're punting. It just means you have won the first 2 games of the series. It's a rainy night, so the weather conditions aren't great, which certainly could lead to a slip or some kind of injury. Wouldn't that be the perfect day to sit him? I'm not even factoring in, the Yankees on Friday, which, maybe plays a small role just because it is going to be an emotional weekend, like I mentioned. So I didn't have a problem with it. I understood it. That's number one. Let's get to number 2 because, again, Knicks Celtics are going on, so I'm doing my best to watch this game. And that is when the Mets had one of their very few scoring opportunities, because this wasn't one of your typical Met games where they had a lot of opportunities. Obviously, in the first inning was a golden opportunity. Vientos got a hit. Alonso drew a walk. And then Nimmo flied out. Marte drew a walk. And they're set up with the bases loaded 2 out. Unfortunately, Luis Torrens strikes out. It's one of the rare opportunities they had. They did not have a lot of opportunities in this game. But the one that is certainly worthy of talking about before we get to Clay Holmes was the bottom of the 4th inning. You down 2-0. Nimmo leads off with a base hit. Marte lines out. Torrens singles. Taylor pops up, and Acuna walks. You got the bases loaded and 2 out, and Bailey Falter is pulled from the game, who is a left-hander. And so instead, this Chase Shugart comes into the game, right-hander. Right-hander. I'm trying to remember this. Yes, right-hander. And you've got Jose Ozokar up with the bases loaded and 2 outs. And I'm going to tell you, before I defend Carlos Mendoza, because I actually am on not pinch hitting for Ozokar, I did think, like everyone else, why not pinch hit? You're down 2-0. I'm not thinking about the official game aspect of it, because to me, they were going to play 9 innings. Once they got through the rain in the second inning, I was pretty sure they were going to get through 9 innings. But I'm more thinking, you got a great opportunity here. You got bases loaded 2 out. Jose Ozokar has not done a bad job since he's come up here, but wouldn't you rather have someone else up at the plate? Soto is not the answer. I'm gonna nip that one in the bud right away, because if you're giving the guy an off day, like if you've come to the determination, whether we agree with it or not, I do, or at least I understand it. If you've come to the determination that you're giving the guy an off day, you're going to use him in the 4th inning? Like what the hell was the point of the off day? They don't give him an off day. They just play him. So I wasn't thinking about Soto. The guy I was thinking about was Jeff McNeil, because why did Jeff McNeil not start this game? The answer is, okay, a left-hander's on the mound, and probably you like the idea of Acuna playing second base. You like the idea of Tyrone Taylor playing center, and Azokar's on the major league roster, so give him a start in right field. McNeil, with a righty coming in, seems to me to make the most sense to be in a spot where that's the guy I would use to come in and try to get a big base hit. So to me, it wasn't even Sodto, because I think it's a contradiction to go to Sodto. What? You give him an off day, and now you're just going to use him in the fourth inning? I don't think Jeff McNeil was having an off day. I think Jeff McNeil was just not in the lineup. I think there's a difference between the two. So I did think about it. It was going through my mind, which I'm sure every Met fan had. Bases loaded, 2 out, down by 2, bottom of the fourth inning. Hey, let's come back into the game and use Jeff McNeil. Or most people thought Juan Sodto, but I understood why not Juan Sodto. Here's where I'll defend Mendy, and I get Hoff's thoughts. He was in the building for this. This is May. And while I want to win the game, and we all want to win the game, how often are you going to see a guy pinch hit for in the fourth inning of a 2-0 game? Like, that's an October move. That's a desperation move. And I think when you're in the spot you're in, not that you're punting games, it's not punting, it's I put the guy in my starting lineup. I'm going to play him for more than one at bat. So I'm not disagreeing that I was thinking about it, but it's also just not realistic. Like, that's not what managers are going to do. And Mendy said as much after the game that, it's the fourth inning. Not going to pinch hit for this guy. So it obviously sucked. Ozokar didn't come through. The Met offense did absolutely nothing after that. It wasn't your typical, they screwed up with tons of runners and scoring position opportunities. They just didn't have a lot of opportunities. They didn't get guys on base. It was just a lifeless kind of performance. And it was frustrating because look who you're facing. Bailey Falter walked 5 guys in 3 2/3 innings. He threw 1,000,000 pitches. He threw 80 pitches in 3 2/3 innings, which is why he was pulled in the fourth inning, even though he didn't allow a run. And you can't hit Shugart and Tanner Rainey and Bednar and Santana. So it sucked. I mean, the offense did absolutely nothing. Hoff, where were you sitting? Were you sitting in the outfield? That's the way it kind of looked when you put a picture out on social.
Yeah, we were sitting in section 138. Typically, when we go with our little league, we've been doing down the third baseline. But they changed it today, which was better off. Like, thank God the guy that runs it decided to do the outfield right next to the apple, just to the left of the apple, because when it rained, we were protected. Let's put it that way.
That's good.
We were in perfect. We didn't have to move. It was great. But to your point, man, I never even thought twice about Juan Sodto. Like, I didn't think about it. Like, because it's 2-0. I'm thinking this is going to be, once Clay Holmes gave up that 2-run home run, I'm going, this is going to be a slop fest of a game, and there's going to be just messiness all night long, and there's going to be multiple opportunities that the Pirates are going to give up terrible defensive plays, and it's just going to be one of these sloppy games that, I don't want to see Juan Sodto get hurt.
Right.
Like, when the first thing I thought of when they benched him today was, well, it's a terrible day, raining outside. Let's not get him hurt in any way possible. Let's save him for a Friday. Whatever. The weather's gonna be terrible anyway. But that being said, though, I never thought about Juan Sodto at all. So, like, for anybody complaining about that, being like, why are you punting? No, like you said, once Sodto was out of the lineup, I'm not bringing him in. I'm not. There's no reason to.
All right, fair enough. Look at you. Very balanced take. I was expecting you to be like, I was Juan Sodto. But no, you're very – it's a reasonable opinion to have. I respect
What inning was it, the fourth inning?
It was the fourth inning. No, I get it. Bottom of the fourth inning, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, if it's a different spot, if you're telling me in the 8th or 9th inning, it's bases loaded, and then you still give Ozokar a shot, then I'll be like, what the hell are we doing here? But especially if David Bednar was pitching, I'd say let's definitely bring in Juan Sodto, because that ball's going to the seats. But yeah, no, I'm not that quick with that stuff.
It's too early. I mean, it doesn't mean like thoughts don't go through one's mind. That's why I'm being honest. Like, yeah, I thought about it. I mean, who the hell wants Jose Azocar up with the bases loaded in a 2-0 game? But the bottom of the fourth inning is way too early. As far as Clay Holmes is concerned, I give him credit. He got through 6 innings. And I give him credit. Like, that second inning was unpitchable. And, Carlos Mendoza was asked after the game, is there anything you could have done? And I always think back to Joe Torre. Joe Torre said to Joe and I once years ago, because we asked him, what's your biggest regret in your managerial career? And his answer was not demanding that the Yankees come off the field during the Midges game in 2007. That when he saw the Midges were bothering Jabba Chamberlain, he should have just said, no, we're coming off the field. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I think about that sometimes. In conditions like this, if you're Carlos Mendoza, do you come out of the dugout, especially after 2 missed calls in the Gorski at-bat? And not that you have this premonition that Gorski is going to eventually hit a home run, not that you see that coming necessarily, but when the conditions are that bad, do you come out and cause a scene and say, what are we doing? Like, this is horrible. And what sucked is that I know the Pirates ended up getting 2 more runs later on, but that end of the inning was all about Clay Holmes being affected by the weather. I mean, I'm sorry, I'll make the excuse if it sounds like that. There are 2 outs and nobody on. He gives up a base hit to IKF. He throws a wild pitch. He has 2 calls that are borderline balls. In fact, they're both strikes, if we're being frank. The sweeper and the sinker that were in the upper part of the strike zone that the home plate umpire flat out missed. And then Gorski finally hits 1 out. Like, those 2 runs from the hit to the wild pitch to the missed calls to the home run all felt like it was part of this monsoon. And again, the Pirates ended up scoring 2 more runs and the Mets did nothing. So there's nothing to, they could have gone out and scored some runs, from the 3rd inning on. But I did wonder if Mendy, can you go out there and say, what are we doing? Why are we playing in conditions like this? Even if it's a half-hour rain delay. We've seen Clay come back and pitch after brief rain delays. It just felt like it wasn't real baseball conditions. And, maybe Mendy could have screamed about it.
Well, especially because considering that there is an off day tomorrow, right? Like, you could use your bullpen if you needed to. I know you don't want to, but dude, I got to be honest. That second inning was the height of the rain. Like, it wasn't that bad.
Of course,
it wasn't that bad before. And as soon as the home run was given up, then the inning ends and they sit there for that's when we were on the dance cam. Everyone was on the dance cam for like a good 5-10 minutes or whatever it is. That's why I'm like, dude, you could delay games. You could hold them like yesterday when Pete Alonso, comes onto the field late and they gave a ball 1 because we're not ready. You can delay games, okay? Carlos Mendoza could have gone out there and been like, you know what? Go do some agent nonsense right now. This thing's gonna pass in 5 minutes. But this is the height. We can't deal with it right now. Just go work on the field. Do something.
It was just frustrating, though, that he got out of the inning. I mean, you had 2 pitches that were borderline. And Mendy, it was one of the first things Carlos brought up when asked about Clay Holmes' performance, and you can't ignore it. Like, when we sit here now and say, hey, how'd Clay Holmes pitch? How'd he do on Wednesday night? 6 innings, 4 runs is not great, but the 2 runs he gave up, the 2-run home run, come on the heels of 2 flat-out missed calls. So I would give Clay Holmes like a B performance despite the 6 innings, 4 runs. But again, look, we could sit here and bitch all we want about the rain or Carlos Mendoza or the umpire squeezing Clay Holmes. The Met offense scored 0 runs on 6 hits. That's just, you're not winning baseball games that way. And the Mets have relied very heavily on their starting pitching. And coming into this season, the way I viewed this was just have average starting pitching, and this team should score enough runs. It's not really been the case. They've been relying on historically good starting pitching, which we all know about. Let me get to some of your emails from people that consume this game, the finale of this 3-game series. If you want analysis about Game 1 and Game 2, go back and listen to episode 480. We talked all about Game 1, all about Game 2. We'll wrap up Game 3 here. We'll also give you our Rico, I'm the man now star of the series, and our net negative of the series. But let me get to some of your emails. Matthew writes, Mendoza punted today's game. Oh, I love this. I love it. Carlos Mendoza punted today's game. If you look at the lineup he constructed today, he had 0 interest in winning. And when he had a chance to redeem himself, he opted to keep Ozokar in with the bases loaded rather than pinch hitting with Sodto. He doesn't play to win. You saw it when he refused to put Edwin Diaz in the Friday and Sunday games on the road against the Nationals, opting for Chris Davinsky for a second inning against Arizona. Today's game was extremely disgraceful. The lineup was disgraceful. Play to win the game rather than the long game. You can do both. You can play the long game and also try to win. This is from Steve. Steve writes, what would you rather see Friday night? Oh, this is fun. I know one thing has nothing to do with the other, but every time the Knicks have won in this series, the Mets have won. When the Knicks have lost, the Mets have lost. If there was a connection, would you rather see the Mets lose to the Yankees Friday night, meaning the Knicks would lose Game 6, or have the Mets win and the Knicks advance to the Eastern Conference Finals? Steve, this is not a proper question to ask on the Rico Brogna because my answer will not please most people. So you can use your brain on what the answer is. I love the Mets. I love the Mets. I love the Mets. There are 162 games. If they lose Friday at Yankee Stadium and I'll be in the building, I won't be happy. It's not like I'm going to walk out, thrilled, but there's another day tomorrow. You know what I mean? Let's hear from Dan. Dan writes, 6 total runs, 4 for 21 with runners in scoring position, 9 stranded with 2 outs, 22 left on base, 22 strikeouts. Looking flaccid more often than not, even in wins. I know it's ultimately on the players at some points, but at some point you have continually repeat the same pattern, which was a problem last year too, just covered up by the OMG magic. The people in charge of teaching the approaches should probably try and make some adjustments. These guys fly under the radar better than me sneaking out of my house on a Friday night growing up. They've been skating around this problem all season, pulling out wins, but eventually it catches up to you, and you have the question that nobody wants to answer looming. What's going to happen this weekend if you're pitching, let's go with a rope, and you're on the road having to keep up with a legitimate upper echelon offense? The thing they love to tell everyone they are. He's not wrong in terms of this Met offense this season. There have been so many games, and certainly this series against Pittsburgh certainly qualifies, where they haven't hit enough. Whether it's Wednesday's game where they just don't hit, they got shut out, or the missed opportunity, especially in the opener of this series against the Pirates, they leave a lot on the table and they put their pitching in a spot where there's no margin for error. And what I agree with you, Dan, is that eventually the pitching is, I don't want to say let go of the rope. It's not going to pitch to a 2.70 ERA. That's not going to happen. And I think when you get a 6-inning 3-run performance, or in this case, a 6-inning 4-run performance, this offense should be good enough where they score 5 or 6 runs and win anyway. So I think you're half right. Eventually, this offense cannot put up these anemic numbers. Eventually, if this offense continues to be very start and stop and very inconsistent, the losses are going to come. I agree with you. Ron Shea has a question for you, Pete. Be ready because you're about to take some heat. Ron writes, I sat in the same seats as Pete Hoffman. I'm curious if you left early, or was he one of the hundreds of people left in the ballpark at the end of the game? By the way, if you had your children with you, 100%, you should have left there early since the Mets had no shot. So he's giving you it out if your kids are there. But Pete, did you leave the Met game early?
I did. And now I also have to admit that I did not drive. We did have our kids, but I went with a bunch of people, but specifically the person that was with us, my boy Rich and his son were with us. So they decided they had to leave at the 7th inning. So we did too. And I'm okay with that.
You know what I find funny about the leaving early thing? And maybe you can help me out with this. So even on a night where there's a rain delay, the game starts about 15 minutes late. And, there are little delays in the middle of the game. You're putting the diamond dry on, you're making sure the field's okay. This was still a game that ended in 2 hours and 51 minutes. This is still a game that ended at about 10:30. This is an average end time from baseball games in the pre-pitch clock era. And so even with a pitch clock that makes the games go quick, people still need to leave at the same point of a baseball game, even if it's occurring earlier than it would have. I don't understand that.
Can I tell you something? I don't know what it was about today. The kids had a blast. The kids were running around. I mean, I'm talking about like we had 7, 8, 12-year-olds. And we had all different ages. They were running around having a great time catching balls from the, Nimmo was throwing balls to them. Everyone was throwing balls to them during the game, whatever. But the adults were like, dude, this game is dragging. I'm exhausted. It's a Wednesday. It's hump day. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why did we come today? So I think it just might be the midweek game, the midweek blunders.
Yeah, it was an ugly game. I mean, it was an ugly, lifeless game. And it was one of those weird nights where, and again, I'm coming from a perspective, I'm not scoring the game. I'm sitting there at the TD Bank Garden, obviously, so it's a little different. But you just felt the game was over from the third inning on. Like, second inning on, really. Like, after the 2-run home run and the missed opportunity early, it just felt like one of those games where they weren't going to make a great comeback, where they weren't going to rally. They did get the leadoff man on in the ninth inning against Dennis Santana, and I was like, maybe. And then, obviously, I think Acuna hit the ball hard. It didn't go anywhere, and the Mets come up empty. Oh, it was cool to see Acuna in center field. That was cool to see, and it was circumstances that led him to center field because they didn't want to go to Sotto. Ozokar ended up getting pinch hit for by Jeff McNeil. Beatty replaced Tyrone Taylor. So it was the circumstances where they didn't have any other option unless Sotto was coming in the game. It shows you they just don't believe in him as a center fielder. I mean, that's been obvious since they've been putting Jeff McNeil out there. I'm curious, but the Mets are clearly answering it for us that they don't believe in him in center field, and he only played there for a couple of innings.
Yeah, but also here's the other thing too is, I mean, the defensively he's better at second base. Like, you put any second baseman on the field right now on the New York Mets, Acuna is better than all of them.
I agree.
It just is what it is.
I agree.
I mean, there was a play, and I don't remember if a run actually scored. I think they got out of the inning, but I think it was like two runners ended up being on, or whatever, base loaded, whatever the case is. A ball hit up the middle. Acuna got to the ball, just couldn't get a throw off. But the fact that he got to it, I'm like, McNeil would have tapped it with his glove. If anything, it would have gone past Tyrone Taylor.
He's better than McNeil defensively. I agree.
100%. So listen, why break that up? Why be like, let's try to force him in center field? Why?
The only reason why is because if Ronnie Mauricio hits in the minor leagues and they want to call him up, I don't see Mauricio necessarily becoming a center fielder, and center field remains sort of this openish position. I mean, Tyrone Taylor's a nice player, but he's a fourth outfielder. So it just gives them the possibilities of him playing out there if Ronnie Mauricio ends up back up here. But as of right now, that's not the case. You can knock one out of the ballpark and raise the apple with Takara Too High, a sparkling cocktail that blends real shochu spirits with the delicious flavors of fruits locally grown in Japan. It's available at Citi Field and Fuji Apple, of course. White peach and lemon. Looking very nice, Pete. Very, very nice. We have some tough decisions to make. The Mets did win 2 out of 3 against the Pirates, and we've got to name a Rico the man star of the series. We've had a few controversial ones, getting a lot of negative feedback about the Brett Beatty decision, that it should have been Lindor, that I should have stuck with my gut, that it was Lindor over Beatty, but I gave in to Hoff and I gave in to a few Met fans. And the series before that against Arizona, we gave it to Sotto, which also should have been Francisco Lindor. Well, let me start off by saying this to the Lindor fans. They may not like this. I think Francisco Lindor is the net negative of this series. First of all, there isn't anyone that jumps out at you as someone that was a huge negative, but Lindor's defense in this series was not good. And while it didn't contribute to the losses because the Mets overcame it, I don't know what the hell was going on with his defense. So between his defense, between Mitch Keller basically making Lindor like his little lapdog when he struck him out 3 times, he did take an offer in the finale of this series. He did have 3 hits in game 1, and that's the one thing that you pause on, because he did have 3 hits, including the hit, the weird one that went off the bag against IKF. But I look at the defense, and maybe it's the bar I have for Francisco. That's the guy that jumps out at me as the net negative of this series.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. We talked about the first couple games, yesterday's Rico. The defense overall has been putrid. It wasn't just Lindor, but he did make some really costly plays that could have cost them the games prior. And I can't disagree with you on that.
And we still love you, Francisco. Just saying. And part of it is the high bar that we have for you. As far as the star of the series is concerned, there are a couple of options. I think Brett Beatty is one that certainly is a nice, easy choice. He had a game-winning home run in Game 2 of the series, the game that secured the Mets winning this 3-game series, a home run opposite field in the 7th inning after the Mets had given up the lead in the 6th inning. So I think Brett Beatty is certainly a fair candidate. He had another hit in that game. So I think Brett Beatty is a great candidate. I think the other one's Brandon Nimmo. I mean, Brandon Nimmo had a double in Game 1 that directly led to a run. He also had an RBI double that directly led to a run. And oh, by the way, he made not one but 2 leaping catches, one of which took a home run away. The other one against Joey Bart probably took a double away. So the leaping catches, the 2 extra base hits that led to runs, and runs were very hard to come by in this series. I got to tell you, I lean towards Nimmo, though Beatty's defense was good too. So those are the 2 that jump out at me. And even Kodai Senga. Like, I know he throws a lot of pitches, or in this case, 102 in 5 2/3 innings, and he couldn't get through the 6th inning. And we would like our starters to get through 6 innings, dare I say 7. But he continues to be really, really good. And so I think he's another candidate of the 3, or maybe anyone I didn't mention. Anyone jump out at you for the Rico, I'm the man now star of the series?
Yeah, I was going to say Kodai, to be honest with you, because if it wasn't for, there was who came in and gave up the inherited runner. I forget who it was. It was Reed Garrett. Maybe it's the glasses, whatever it was. But take away that. I mean, his scoreless streak was outrageous. And I know we can't go back in time because it's about this series. But that game could have got out of hand many different times. And he continued to strand runners at third base. He clearly won you the game. I mean, he didn't because Brett Beatty got the hit, but he kept you in that game on Tuesday, which eventually won. I think you could bypass Beatty. The 6 innings he pitched were greater than the home run, even though that's the one that you'll remember. However, I can't deny the Nimmo stuff. You got to give it to him. He's been playing well. Even today. Even today, he's still getting on base. He's hitting the ball. He's hit a hot streak. So let's go. Let's ride it out as long as possible. I thought this guy was dead about a week or 2 ago in Arizona.
I'm glad you came around because I was going to overrule you and say it's Brandon Nimmo. And honorable to Brett Beatty, honorable mention to Brett Beatty, same with Kodai Senga. But he took away, clearly 1 home run. And think back to the importance of that play. Like, it was a 3-2 game when he took the home run back. Like, it was a huge moment in the game. It would have tied the game. And he's leaping up in the 8th inning with Dednell Nunez on the mound. So sometimes it's also how important a play was. And then the next game, even though it wasn't as clear that it was going to be a home run, that was going to give them the lead. And then he drives in a run. So I think it is Brandon Nimmo. I think sometimes in a series it's not overly obvious, but if we're going to give Lindor the net negative, and a lot of it is based on defense, then I think, to be fair, it's Brandon Nimmo. So congratulations for the very first time this season. Brandon Nimmo is your Rico, I'm the man now star of the series. I like to write it down. I'm now doing that. And so here is our running tally, if you will. Pete Alonso has done it 4 times. Francisco Lindor has done it twice. That is the only guys that have done it multiple times. The other guys that have done it once, Brandon Nimmo, Brett Beatty, Juan Sodto, Tyrone Taylor, Francisco Alvarez, Kodai Senga, Max Kranick, and Edwin Diaz. And now we begin the Subway Series. And I say this every year about this series. In the end, it's 3 games against an American League team. And so the import of the game is not any bigger than a game against the A's. It's just the facts. It's not any bigger than a game against the Red Sox. But I will not deny, especially being in the ballpark, especially dealing with Yankee fans, that it does have a playoff atmosphere. And once you're there, and once you're dealing with your friends who are Yankee fans, you'll want to beat them. So I say this before something good happens or something bad happens. I hope we sweep them. But if we don't, it's not the end of the world. And if we do, it doesn't mean we're winning the World Series. Like, it's a fun series. There's apparently a lot on the line when it comes to emotions, but there's not a lot on the line when it comes to the reality of the standings and this season. With that said, It will be a very eventful weekend. I think Soto's return is more about Yankee fans than it is us. He signed with us. He's on the Mets. His return to Yankee Stadium, whatever. Like it shouldn't phase us. It should phase the Yankee fan. The pitching matchups that we projected a week ago has turned out to be the case. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Tyler McGill against Carlos Rodon, Griffin Canning against Clark Schmidt, and David Peterson against Max Fried. So 2 left-handers the Mets are going to face. They have not done that very often this year. When they face lefties, it's usually like one of them in a series. So they're actually going to face 2 lefties in 3 games. Does Brett Beatty get a start against a lefty? Does Jeff McNeil get a start against a lefty? Be interesting to see how Mendy handles this thing. But we will cover it. We'll give you Ricos after each Subway Series game. But right now I need to go to sleep because I am in a hotel in Boston, Massachusetts, recording this Rico Brogna after the Celtics defeated the Knicks and after the Mets lost to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I'm going to have to wake up at the crack of dawn, while most of you are listening to this podcast while driving to work. You can always interact with us by emailing us, thericob@gmail.com, thericob@gmail.com. I'll be on the air, Evan and Tiki, 2 o'clock on the Fan, and we will have Rico Brognas after each of the Subway Series games. Thank you very much for listening, downloading, and subscribing to episode 481 of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.